This is a legacy episode of the Lesbian Historic Motif podcast, originally released as part of the Lesbian Talk Show podcast group. Some references may be obsolete. The show looks at lesbian-relevant themes in history and literature, has interviews and discussions about current historical fiction with queer female characters, including fantastic versions of the past, and presents new original historical fiction for your enjoyment. Last week, we had Stephanie Burgis on the show to talk about her own books. In this show, she's here to talk about historic stories with queer female characters that she's particularly enjoyed. Welcome back, Stephanie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So, let's plunge right into the books then.
All right. Well, my first one is by K.J. Charles. It's proper English, and it makes me ridiculously happy because it's basically a golden age crime story set at a house party, and it gives us a wonderful FF couple having an amazing romance in the midst of all of it, and it's got humor, and it's got complicated family dynamics, which make me so happy every single time. And it was just a total joy. If you've ever read any Agatha Christie, you'll notice they're all of the sort of coded lesbian characters nonstop. Mm-hmm. And it was nice to read a mystery set in that time period where the code is taken away. It's right out there, and they have a fantastic happy ending.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I love that one too.
Yeah, I read it right after surgery this spring, and it was like the only thing that could have taken my mind off. It was perfect.
Okay, what's the next book?
The next book is, well, I'm trying to decide. Yes, this is a really difficult task for me to narrow it all down, but it's going to be actually a novelette by Aliette Bedard. It's called Of Books and Earth and Courtship. Uh-huh. And this one is fantasy historical. It's set in a post-apocalyptic 20th century magical Paris, and in which there are fallen angels who are extremely dangerous and amoral, and there is danger at every turn, and survivors in Paris are mostly clustering in these houses, these great houses which are very magical, and there's lots of dark political maneuvering going on within them. Well, this is a prequel story, because in the first book in the series, House of Shattered Wings, one of the houses is ruled by a woman called Celine, who has a partner named Emmanuel. And it's a very dark book. But then Aliette wrote this amazing prequel story of Books and Earth and Courtship, which is about how Celine and Emmanuel first got together, and it's so much fun. It's this, well, I would say for this series, it's incredibly light and frothy. It might not be as light and frothy as another author might take it, but for this series, it is just like a chocolate confection, and I loved every word of it.
Yeah, I've never been quite sure how to place that series in time, because the setting clearly has had analogs of a lot of 20th century history, and I think the look and feel is sort of, I mean, she may have said, I'm not sure, but the look and feel of the first book is sort of golden age type, glittering age. But it's so clearly diverged from our world that I'm never quite sure whether to count it as historical, even so.
It's tricky.
I love it. It's got so many queer characters in there.
Yes, and just casually.
Yes.
Which is great. Yeah, and it's so cute. I mean, it's just, their relationship is so cute in the story. It's so nice to get a cute, frothy story in this dark, wonderful, but very dark series. And, yeah, it was just ridiculously fun, and you could read it even without having read any of the books first, because it is a prequel story. Uh-huh. So you don't have to have any previous knowledge. Uh-huh. And then the last one I was going to talk about, I feel almost guilty recommending it because I think almost anyone who listens to this podcast will have heard about it, but I just want to be one more voice saying Cat Sebastian's A Little Light Mischief novella is just delightful. It's a Regency, it's a romance between a lady's maid who just happens to be a foreign thief and a lady's companion who's very proper, and they fall madly in love, commit a crime to exact some very, very well-deserved revenge on a guy who was just horrible, and he deserves this. And it just made me enormously happy. And if you want that really wonderful, light, frothy, fun Regency tone with the reformed scoundrel, heroine in this case, and the very proper heroine, it ticks every box. I loved it.
Yeah, I liked how it was set up with the class issues, and how the characters were very true to their backgrounds with very genuine constraints and motivations and all that. I really enjoyed that.
Absolutely.
So I will include links to those titles in the show notes, and thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing some of your favorite books with us.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to talk about books anytime.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Lesbian Historic Motif Podcast. See the show notes for links to people and topics. Most shows will have a transcript linked as well. If you have a book announcement, a topic suggestion, or might like to appear on the show, please drop me an email. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate it and subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and consider supporting our Patreon.